Here we are.
Here we are. A lot going on in the world right now.
Yeah,
By
yeah.
the time this airs, we
Election.
will have a new president elect,
Yep,
which is so interesting. And amongst all of that and life still goes on, right?
yep, 100%.
And today, our topic is a little more somber than normal
Yep.
because we are going to talk about grief.
Yeah, that's one that I think everybody experiences in some form every moment or in moments of
Absolutely.
their life. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And I think navigating grief while honoring your loved one can be very difficult. We have been through this in the last 3.5 years.
Yep,
And even just starting to talk about this, I'm getting a little emotional. So we're going to.
you got this.
We're gonna get through it. But I think that as the holidays approach, often this is even harder on people
Yeah, for sure.
because you have an empty chair at the table and you look back on times that you had. So we want to talk about ways that we can get through this and kind of tell our story about what we've been through over the last 3.5 years and how we're navigating that.
Yeah, so navigating grief is a pretty broad stroke, how this came to be in our life, but also to helping people understand kind of some of the things that you can grow from and move forward with.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be it's good idea, a good topic in this sense for us.
And just for all people. I mean, we've all lost someone. I remember as a kid, I lost my grandpa, and it
Sure.
was the first person that I ever loved that I lost.
Yeah.
And it was a huge loss
Sure.
for me and growing up, we talked about my grandpa all the time.
Right.
He was a part of Christmas still, and in our family, tradition is chocolate gravy and biscuits on Christmas morning, and that's a family recipe passed down from my grandpa's side. And that has been a big part of our family growing up.
Right.
And so part of how we dealt with that loss was continuing to have them a part of that holiday by
Right.
remembering.
Right.
And my mom has always said, no one is ever truly gone as long as they're remembered.
Yep.
And I feel like that is so true.
But you have to admit that's a hard statement to live through, move forward with, because you still miss that person or person. This is
Yeah.
family, friend, whatever the qualifier, even a dog. I mean, all qualify it in
Yes.
times of our lives. So I think that those memories and those things that you continually do in effort to remind yourself of the good that came from that person
Yes.
or that animal.
And and I think that there are levels of grief. So when my grandpa died when I was 12, um, he had a heart attack and was gone. Nobody got to say goodbye.
Right.
And the loss was, it feels bigger because you didn't get to say what you wanted to say to them. Then, many years later, when my grandma died, she had suffered from Alzheimer's and for many years and was not her true self in those
Sure.
later years.
Yeah.
And many of us, I think the whole family, felt relief, not just for her, but
Yeah.
for us because she was not the same person. So that grief was very different.
Right.
We celebrated her life. We started to remember her how we had remembered her before the disease, and
Right.
that can only happen once they're gone, right? So there's so many different levels. Um, our family experienced a huge traumatic loss
Yeah.
in 2021. And I think when there's trauma, that hits even differently
Sure. For sure.
because there's just no reason.
Yeah.
So in our case, my sister, who was 2 years older than me,
Hmm.
my very first best friend in my whole life,
Right.
Many wonderful talks after school and many fights after school.
Scrappy. Yeah, yeah. You both being scrappy. That absolutely applies.
Yeah, we were both pretty scrappy. But she stepped in front of a domestic violence situation,
Right.
and both women were killed that night
Yeah,
by
terribly.
her
Very tragic scenario. I mean,
neighbor slash former foster daughter, and he shot both of them and fled.
right.
So in our case, I think just the trauma behind that, I still often think about that night because boom, changed in
Right.
an instant.
Yeah.
And
Millisecond, literally.
yeah, and there are so many things that I remember. I mean, we had just gotten home from a trip and
Business
a
trip.
work trip,
Yeah, business
and
trip.
we had stayed up waiting for my son to get home from work, and we finally went to bed at like 10:45, and then at 11:30 my phone is ringing on the bedside, and I remember every detail of that night.
So do I.
I remember
Yeah.
every detail. And you try to forget every detail because
Right.
it's so traumatic, right?
Yeah.
Um,
They're,
I
they
do.
they imprint. They
Yeah.
definitely imprint. Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember after we finally figured out hours later, we knew she had been shot, and we knew she'd been taken to the hospital. Um, and finally, I remember 2 o'clock in the morning texting my friend that worked at the hospital, desperate for an answer, whether she was dead or alive, right? And I remember texting her, and you put your hand on my arm and you said, "Sweetie, stop." And I'm like, "No, I'm texting Michelle Brown. Like, stop. I just need to text her." And you said, "Babe, just take a minute. I think your sister's gone." And I was so mad at you. Why would you say that?
Mm-hmm.
And you had found an article online,
Yeah. The amazing part of technology and a phone nowadays, I mean, everything is
and it said
unforgivably quick.
2 women were murdered, and it showed her apartment complex. And I thought there had to be a third person. Like she just was shot. Like at
Right.
that point, you're desperate for anything but what you've just heard, right?
Sure.
So I call the hospital, and I'm like, I've been calling
Yep.
for 3 hours, and no one will give me an answer. I
Right.
just read an article.
We both were dialing for that,
Yeah.
trying to get a way in.
I just read an article online that 2 women were murdered. My sister is at your hospital. I need to know if she's dead or alive. Someone needs to talk to me now. Put me on hold, find someone, right? So they come back, "Are you the next of kin?" "Yes." So the doctor finally comes on. And then she says, "Your sister is here. I'm going to get a social worker and call you back." And at that moment, I knew.
Yeah, for sure. We both.
That moment,
Yeah,
I knew,
that-
right?
That was that pivotal second, right?
But when you found that article online, I thought, I better call my mom, because my niece, my sister's only daughter, and her friends had been the one that had reached out to us. And so they knew what was going on, but my parents didn't know yet.
Right.
And they were on a trip. It was Easter vacation.
Right.
They had Bella, my daughter, on this trip, and they were coming home the next day. And I thought, after you found that article, I thought, I can't call my parents and tell them that she is dead.
Right.
I have to call and tell them that she has been shot so they can process. Because we knew now at this point, like,
Right.
it's
over.
inevitable, right?
Yeah.
So I finally get a hold of my parents. We tell them. Then we get a hold of the hospital. And then the social worker calls me back, and they said, she's gone. And what I remember so distinctly to this day, when that happened, we were in bed because we're in bed at 11:30. So this whole time we're now sitting up in bed, calling the hospital, doing all these things. You came around to my side of the bed, and you hugged me. And I'm in my robe, and we're hugging. But the most interesting thing about that is that I see that moment from above.
Yeah. You've told me that, and still, Yeah, that was a
And I think, personally, this is, we all have our opinions. I think that God knew my pain and he brought me up and he gave me a hug.
yeah,
And he's like, all right, now you got to go deal with this, right?
yeah.
So, trauma, that is trauma
That is
loss.
trauma.
And for 3.5 years, we dealt with courts, we dealt with
Attorneys.
34 hearings. We dealt with the preliminary hearing and the defense attorney saying extremely inappropriate things and to me. And I think that postpones the healing,
Oh yeah, they say need closure, right? And I think
right?
closure is I don't know if there's ever really a closure. I think some people just feel like there's a step that gives them the capacity of moving on to some level. In this case, lucky enough, the guy's going away for life, and
Yeah.
justice was served, and more to the
Well,
story. But
justice is never served in that situation,
as
but
best
as
as the
best as
American
it
way we
can
do,
be,
right?
right? But, there's so many layers of loss because, okay, that's my sister. I've known her my whole life. Very best, my first best friend. Like, you have all these inside private jokes, all these different things. But my sister's only daughter, who had a baby, her first baby 8 days later,
Yeah. Oh,
how do you,
celebrate life and celebrate loss.
yeah. And, she told me one time she feels like she traded. She feels like she traded her mom for her daughter. And that's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to raise a baby without your mom.
Right.
I mean, my mom was pivotal during those younger years. So,
Still is.
and still is.
Right.
Absolutely.
For sure.
So,
Shout out to Grammy.
I know, I know. And so in that time, I'll tell you that, the first few months of, I think, especially a sudden loss, you're processing that this is even happening. Like, I can't believe this is real. You still want to pick up the phone and call that person. You still, there's all these things happening.
Right. Well, it becomes the forefront at the moment because those natural actions, if you want to say, it's,
Yeah.
let's call Bob, or
Yeah.
whatever, or we should get this for, or, all
Yeah.
those naturals. And then it layers in. I will mention before we get too deep into this part is that there's a unique vantage point for me. I'm now 7 years into this marriage and was an insider from the outside. And you're talking about navigating,
Yeah, for sure.
unique scenario because I cared for Michelle and I cared for that, every family member that now has joined our family and as me theirs, how that looks and how you navigate that from this side.
Right.
Because the emotions are definitely there. I was super upset. I all the same, but at the same time, really unique position
Yeah,
to
the
make
pain is
sure
different.
the pain and the navigating of relationships between moms and dads and sisters and friends from that side. So
Right.
unique. I mean, unique. I mean, God forbid anybody has to go through this, and they do,
Right.
and this is our world. But I think it doesn't matter if you're losing your sister in such a tragic way, or a cousin or aunt or mother or father. That navigating aspect of it is a choice, as we refer to our show, and resorting to success.
Right.
Doesn't necessarily mean anything more than just trying to find a safe spot.
For sure. And everyone has a different role. I
Right.
mean,
For sure.
I think in my case, I think that we're all dealing with our own pain. You had your
Oh,
own pain
yeah.
with it, but then you were worried about me.
Oh,
I
yeah,
was worried
number
about
one.
my niece and my parents. And that I think changed me. I mean, I remember not too long after that happened, and we had a friend who has a little plane, and he says, "Let's go to Monterey. Let's go have lunch." I'm like, "There is no way I'm getting on a private plane. What if something happened? My parents can't lose me too." Like, it has changed how I feel about
sure.
risk,
Yeah.
about life.
Yeah.
And not that I
Sure.
want
You know
to
what? No
start
skydiving, right? Is what you're saying?
no skydiving, right?
Okay.
No.
Okay, I'm not on that one
No,
too.
no,
So
It does, though. It
yeah,
changes you,
no, for
right?
sure.
Because
For sure.
I think I couldn't do that to my parents. What if something happened to me? They couldn't survive that.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
a whole different type of responsibility, I think, for me now.
Yeah.
Um,
And the awareness to that is a big step. Your sweet person, your sweetheart carries that as a commitment to family and to relationships. And that is a masterful awareness because if people can do that for another person, and it's tricky. I mean, you're already navigating your own
right.
parts and pieces of it.
It is tricky. And I remember about 6 months after this happened, you and I were in Seattle for
Yeah,
work.
yeah,
And we were pulling up to a store and we were in the car joking about something. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but we were joking about something. And we get out of the car and you come around to my side and you just grabbed me and hugged me and you said, "There's my girl."
hmm
And I said, "What do you mean?" And you said, "Well, I haven't heard you laugh in a long time.
hmm
You've been gone."
right.
And that hit me because
She does listen to me, huh?
right? That hit me because I thought, "Oh my gosh, I've always been so conscious of the energy that I bring into the room. I
Yeah,
always feel like I want to be a bright spot for people." And it made me sad to think that the people that I love so much in my life, my family, that I was not even laughing.
sure.
So, thank you for saying that because that prompted me to go get counseling,
Yeah,
grief counseling. And, maybe it's not for everybody, but I will say I definitely feel like that helped me
yeah,
because they listen to you, tell your story, and it's hard. Therapy, counseling is hard. We were supposed to have dinner with friends that night that I had my first session, and I canceled because I was so exhausted and all I wanted to do was sleep. But you have to work through those feelings.
yeah,
And so I'll tell you the biggest thing that I took out of the counseling was do something in your sister's honor.
hmm
And I hadn't thought of that, right? Um, and so we decided after that time, this is like September, October, that for the holidays we were going to do a toilet paper drive.
right.
So the funny story that goes behind the toilet paper
Oh
drive.
boy, yeah, this is a cutie.
So my sister was quite the character.
Yep.
I always say she had big everything. She had big hair, a big butt, a big personality, a big laugh.
Yeah, yeah.
She had big everything.
As we call in this family, extra.
Extra, extra. And so in all things that she did, she did everything big. So she just always had to go to the bathroom. Like as she got older and I would call her and she wouldn't answer. She'd call me back a couple minutes later. I'm like, "Let me guess, you're in the bathroom, right?" So one time we were in Vegas and she was watching the kids. And so we got the kids souvenirs. And as we were getting ready to leave the hotel, I said, "Oh my gosh, we didn't get Bob a souvenir." And so I thought, well, okay. So I go into the bathroom to go to the bathroom one more time before we leave. Because, road
It's a family
trip.
thing.
And there's an extra roll of toilet paper in there. And I go,
Yep,
"Yep."
yep. And so it started.
And so it began. So after that point, in every hotel we ever went to,
Which we traveled for our living, right? So
we
we were out on
traveled
the
a lot
road,
during that time for
out
work.
cities and states and counties and you name it, we were there.
So she got toilet paper from every city on the West Coast that we traveled.
Mexico,
From Mexico, from Chicago, from New
cruise
York,
ships.
from Atlanta, from everywhere we went. We picked up the roll of toilet paper,
Yep,
right?
yep.
And that went on for years.
Yep.
And then I would always give them to her, and she would always roll her eyes, and she would always use them.
Guarantee it's a freebie, and it was a usable one.
And one year we even got her this huge
Oh yeah,
roll of toilet
Charmin had
paper.
it. We were laughing at that just by circumstance.
It had
right?
its own stand,
Yep,
and she
an 18-inch round roll of toilet paper.
And so it felt fitting.
Not sponsored by Charmin, but we're working with them.
But we should. Charmin, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so that year we said we are going to collect toilet paper,
Right.
and we are going to donate it to the Marjorie Mason Center.
Yep.
And for those of you that do not know, the Marjorie Mason Center is a charity that
Oh,
they house women and children who are fleeing from domestic violence. And as I've begun this journey of healing after my sister passed, I have met so many people that have actually used those services.
yeah. Scary thought the way that
It's
operates in our world.
scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what an amazing entity that is now in our market, in our area of Fresno, is, I mean,
They
wow.
do incredible
Incredible
work.
work,
They're
yeah.
actually building an entire new facility now to house more people.
And it's not just women, men too, men alike get
Yes.
abused.
Absolutely, men do, which is very sad. And Marjorie Mason herself was killed
Yep.
in a domestic violence act, and her family opened this charity in her honor. And so it felt fitting.
And sadly to say, it exploded in terms of use.
Yes.
I mean, crazy to think. I mean, we're in a big community. We probably 1.4 million people metro to literally have a facility to deal with these types of things. So, and there's so many other variants of how people have these experiences, if you want to say.
Yes. Mhm.
Sad.
So the Marjorie Mason Center has become something that I feel has helped my healing.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're able to give back, and we do this in Bub's honor. And that first year, we raised, I don't even know, many rolls of toilet paper.
Yeah, wasn't it like 4,000 rolls? I want
Something
to say
like
it was
that,
close to 4,000 rolls in the first
which
year,
is a
which
lot of rolls.
we literally had people bringing it to our stores, dropping them off on our porch, us going to get them. I mean, just by the blessing of social media in that case, and the networking,
Yes.
and so
And it
now here we are
was,
a few years later.
I think it's been healing for my parents too.
Yeah.
My mom actually went with me around our neighborhood to pick up toilet paper from people, and we talked to so many neighbors, and we heard several people's stories of their own journeys through abuse and different things, and that has been so healing for me to know that we can do something in her honor. And knowing my sister actually for many years had a homeless ministry. She was one of the most giving people you would ever
Oh,
meet. Money was not big for her. Like that wasn't how she counted
that wasn't her
success.
engine. No.
No, she counted success by who she could help and what she could do for people. And she didn't have a lot, but whatever she
She
had,
literally would
she
not
was
eat
willing
if
to
she
give.
gave someone else her food.
Yes.
And literally have seen that happen. I mean, just
Yes.
under
And
centered
she
beyond belief.
was just this incredible giving person. So it feels fitting to do that. And that definitely has been something. So
One way for you to navigate it.
my advice for people who have had a loss is to find some way to connect to the person that they love, that they lost, and do something in their
Outlet.
honor.
Yeah.
Because not only are you helping people, but it feels connective.
Mm.
And it feels like you're doing something that your loved one would want you to do
Right.
and would be proud of you.
Yeah.
And so,
And not everybody has the horsepower mentally or physically to create a foundation or
right.
it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be as simply as you picking up something and taking to one of those places that need help. Just you do it. If that's what helps you, and we're talking about loss of life. This could be leveled into a lot of different things: loss of relationship, loss of businesses, jobs. Grief comes from all different angles.
It does.
Because family members that you've had in your life that may not be there
Yes.
based on life creates a hole too, right?
Right.
So navigating those spaces, find an outlet, find somebody to talk to. This is a big part, right?
Right.
Friend, a counselor, like you said, a therapist. I mean, you see people laugh, and I always think about it in TV as you hear people say everybody needs a therapist. They do.
They do.
I mean, in the sense that, and not
Yeah.
they, it's I. But the thing is, that therapist can be a friend also. So it's not about paying somebody, but if it needs, you feel better about that. It's the subjective part of kids don't want to tell you; they'll tell
That's true.
somebody else because they feel like
But also, grief can be so encompassing that,
engulfing.
what's that?
Is that a magic word? Engulfing, overtaking? Is that what you're referring to?
Right, that like it can take over for so long
Yeah.
that sometimes I mean, your friends are great and all, but they may be over it in a way because they're not experiencing that
Yeah.
with you. So you can
Relate
only talk to
relate
your
to it.
friends for so long about it before they're
Sure.
like, okay,
Yeah.
like move on. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I just think that it's not their grief. It's
Yeah.
not their journey. And so for them, and my friends were wonderful. I'm not saying that, but
No.
it's
But
just a different
it does
journey.
have a timeout. I
Right.
think it's like anything else. It's
And grief hits you. I remember I was getting ready to get on a very important sales call, to sell a big sponsorship when I was in bridal, and something happened. I don't even remember what triggered me. Whatever it was triggered me, and I literally broke down sobbing. And I was home by myself, and I called the person from the company that I was supposed to have this call with. It was the store and then a person from my company, and I called her, and she's like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" I'm literally sobbing on the phone, and I was like, "I need a minute. I have got to regroup. I don't know what happened. I'm having a moment of grief. I will pull myself together. Can you please call Irene?" I remember the customer well. "And I'll call in like 3 minutes." And she's like, "Do you want to cancel it?" I go, "Nope. I'm gonna pull it together, but just give me 3 minutes. I need you need to start this call." Luckily, it was not a Zoom call. It was just a
right.
call.
Yeah.
But
You don't know when it's going to come.
I did some breathing exercises. I started thinking about other things. I got my brain around it, and I was able to do that.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, it was like so crazy. Like people don't know what you're going through on the other end. And I hope that since this journey I've been on the last 3.5 years, that I give people more grace, because it is so true that you don't know what people are going through.
Sure.
And you look back on things, right? This happened on a Friday. On a Monday, we left for Seattle for a work trip,
Yeah.
right? After my sister died, 2 days later.
Jumped a plane, had to go to work.
And the company we worked for was like, take time, take time. It was the last trip I was going to take for work for the season, and we talked through it with my parents and everything, and we're like, let's just get it done, because the next week we're going to have many other tasks. We have to help clean out the apartment, do all these things. Let's just get this part over with, right? So we literally flew to Seattle on a Monday, and I called customers, and we shrunk it down to like 3 days. We were there, Sunday night, Monday night, Tuesday night, and we left on Wednesday. And I will never forget my last appointment on Wednesday, and we were going to go from there to the airport.
Yep.
And I had done so well. Nobody knew what was going on in my life. I showed up to the appointments. I put on my happy face. I went through the appointments. I sold the dresses. I did all the things. I got back in the car and I was a zombie. I went to the next appointment. I put on my happy face. The last appointment, I went through all the same stuff. And as I'm putting my supplies back into my work bag, tears start coming down my face. And the people sitting in front of me are like, "Are you okay?" And I lost it.
Yep.
Because I think I knew, like, I'd held it together.
held it to the
I'd held
finish
it
line,
together.
yeah.
And now I get to go home and be with my family. And it was like waterworks, right? And I'm like, oh my gosh. And it's so dumb that I even did that trip. Like, what was I thinking?
Well,
Because
I don't necessarily look at it that way. I think it's a mental distraction that kept us out of the space. If you,
maybe.
I don't know. I think everybody has a different angle. I think that moment wasn't all that bad. I think it helped deter a little bit of the stress for a short period of time. But
Maybe.
anyways,
But during that
Who
time,
knows? You only know how you felt at
oh
that
my
time, right?
gosh.
You're
And
right.
then you look back and go, what the heck? But during that time, I remember my mom and dad were coming to stay with the kids while we were leaving. And my aunt Cheryl was going to come down and spend some time with my mom.
Right.
And my mom was like, I can't take another person that I have to soothe, that I have to comfort. Like, I can't, when people call me and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to you. And they're crying. And she's like, I feel like I'm comforting them. I don't have the energy.
Well, because you're nurturers as people too. I mean, so
And so I called my Aunt Cheryl and I said, Aunt Cheryl, I love you. You know, I love you, right?
right.
You know, I love you. But if you come down to stay with my mom while we are gone, you can't cry. You can't cry. You got to be there for my mom. You got to bring joy. Mom is tired of comforting people. She is exhausted and tired. And if you're going to come, you can't cry. She was like, oh, okay.
Lucky enough, a brilliantly smart woman, and also
Amazing.
that has horsepower, both control too. So pretty amazing.
So,
AC.
AC, we love you. You did a great job. She came down
Yep.
and they had many moments of fun. And they had many moments of beautiful memories. And Aunt Cheryl brought joy.
Yep.
And when we got home, they were doing some cheer in the backyard of something. I can't even remember, but they were, it was
I
some
remember
movie.
this.
They were, anyways. And I thought, good job, Aunt Cheryl. You did your job, right? So I think communication is super key during times like that.
Yeah.
And when you're going through it, you're such a bumbled mess. You don't even know what you need.
Mm-hmm.
But anyone out there who is helping someone go through grief, I'm gonna give you a couple little pointers of things that really helped us. We had many people, this neighborhood that we live in, and a lot of our friends were really incredible. We had meals every night
Yep.
for
Dang
about
good
a week
food
and a half.
too. We start that up for any other reason? Positive, I hope. But
Man, that was helpful.
yeah, for sure.
And when my parents were staying here with the kids, I mean, every night there
There was
was
something.
something. And so that is amazing. And don't ask. Just say, I'm bringing you dinner. Would Wednesday night work?
Mm-hmm.
Because you think you can handle it.
Well, I think that just to broaden the stroke is called support, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is support.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes back to what I said earlier for me is that here I am in this family, in this case, 4 years at that time,
Right.
ish, give or take. And my motor is support. But my
Right.
motor is really not to say anything other than actions more than it is words. So knowing what to do in those moments is tough. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you have to pick a lane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so accepting support is big. That's letting people help you.
Right.
Letting people help you.
Yeah.
I definitely think that you think you can do it, you want to do it, you're trying to be strong. But anyone supporting someone who's going through something difficult like that, offer to help, offer to run errands for those people, offer to
Pick up the weight.
pick up the weight.
Yeah.
So,
And there's obvious weight. Everybody's got the same weight. I
Yeah.
tell you, in some level, there's a baseline that everybody has.
Right.
So
yeah,
just think about the simple stuff.
right. Um, Rest is so big during that time. And I think we don't give ourselves that because rest is hard. I remember playing through the minute my head hit the pillow, I would replay everything that had happened that night. I would think about things I wanted to say to this person that did this. I mean, my brain just would not shut off. Sleeping was very difficult for months, months and months and months. And so trying to get rest is hard, but that's really important. I think when I finally started sleeping is when I started being able to be myself again a little bit more,
Yeah, for sure.
you
Yeah,
know?
the leverage.
So anything you can do to sleep or rest is so important for your
And you know
healing.
what that is. Everybody has that way. If it's a getaway, if you can afford to do that or the time, or if it's shutting the doors and windows and staying home and not necessarily entertaining that
Right.
quiet moments, quiet time, because we all fight for that every day as it is.
Hmm.
Especially in our lives. But you
Right.
definitely have got to.
And it's weird because life goes on, right?
Right.
Life goes on. I mean, my sweet niece had that baby 8 days later,
Yeah. Ugh.
and life goes on. And now, oh my gosh, she's this mother mothering this beautiful baby. She was 3 hours away from all the family, and our life went on too. I mean,
Yeah.
Trevor had we did an at-home prom that year. It was his senior year. I think it was 2 weeks later, we did an at-home prom
Pretty close.
here, because it was COVID-y and they weren't doing a prom. And so probably shouldn't say that out loud, but anyways, we did. We did that. And so, you're moving forward with your life and still grieving and having those moments. And so you do have to continue to move on with life.
Yeah.
It
Well, and you
has
got to
to
find
go
that spot.
on.
I think that's the navigating piece that you say, and they say move on. And it's like, and it's a really delicate way to say it or even think about it because move on, if you say it with the wrong tone, can be taken, but
Right.
move on. You have to. They say those persons would never want you to not move on. So true because they know you. They know what they
Mhm.
knew you. Whatever that moment, it's the qualifiers are. But
Right.
you've got to say, "Here I go." One
Mhm.
left foot, right foot. It's a choice. It's like we say, everything is a choice. So those choice set of words you pick, that's going to give you the success for the next best day.
And I think you have to remind yourself that you're going to have setbacks. You can't
Yeah,
just say, "Okay, I'm done grieving now." Um, it hits you. It
yeah,
still hits me. We're 3.5 years in,
yeah.
and it still hits me. I mean, I remember one time we're getting ready to go for a walk, and this was probably a year and a half to 2 years after this happened. And I was sitting down putting my shoes on, and I don't know. You were on Facebook. I was on Facebook. Something. Anyways, we saw Meatloaf died. Okay,
Right.
I don't know who knows Meatloaf, but they're
And not the food.
not the food, the singer. And my sister loved that
Band. Yeah.
band. Oh my gosh, I can remember her. She had the records and she would play them in her room, blasting. I can probably sing almost every word to every song on the Bad Out of Hell album just because I heard it from my
Just so
sister's
you know,
room.
she doesn't remember albums and or people that sing. So
I don't.
something did imprint in this scenario.
She listened to it a lot. She did, and um, and Meatloaf died, and my first thought was, gotta call Bub. I gotta call Bub. Oh my god, I gotta call Bub.
Yep.
And then I cried.
Yeah.
And that was like 2 years later,
Right.
So look, give yourself some grace. I think, there's always going to be times. I now am to the point where I still miss her dearly.
Yeah.
I still miss her dearly. But when I see a hummingbird, it brings me joy. Hummingbirds have always been a big part of my
Family. Yeah.
family.
Correct.
My sister and I used to sit on my grandparents' porch and watch hummingbirds with my grandpa.
Mhm.
So we have always thought that, but now they remind me of my sister too.
Right.
So we're going to go through a couple things and then we're going to wrap this up. But go through a couple things that people can do if they're
Sure.
going through grief, okay? Rest and nutrition. We already talked about that. Key, water,
The
rest.
basics.
I mean, seriously, you guys, like truly take care of yourself. What do they say when you're sick? Drink a lot of water and
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
Like you have to take care of yourself. Um, Alcohol probably is not the beverage you should be drinking.
No.
Seriously.
Right. For sure.
And people definitely get into that. Accept support. People want to come bring you dinner. Let
Be
them.
willing to say yes. It may be hurtful. You don't want to do it, but in those moments, once again, those outlets might be a good moment for you. And you have to pick your time. But I agree. It's
They say journaling. Journaling is big. I actually do think that could be very helpful. I I did a lot of typing things out on the computer, just my thoughts. at that time for a while and save them to look back on. For us, it was different because we actually were told by the district attorney to write a victim statement because that will be read at sentencing. And so I think kind of writing through that helped a lot. But journaling definitely, I think, is something that people should do. Exercise. Man, we talked to the teenagers about this. Like, exercise is good for everything.
Well, and also to people that can't rest peacefully, if you get a little physically exhausted, sometimes
True.
it takes out that inhibition or that capacity of not resting because your body's tired. So that's
That's a big one.
yeah.
Exercise, exercise, exercise. Avoid big decisions.
Yep.
Okay. I'm notorious for always wanting to cut my bangs. Who's with me? Don't get the scissors out. That's all I'm going to tell
Right.
you.
Bowl cut over here. Yeah.
Don't cut the bangs. Don't, seriously though, don't make big decisions. That is key.
Well, and that's financial, that's backed by horsepower, the sense of financial
Right.
means.
I
are
mean,
tough.
don't sell a house. Don't give yourself a year or so to settle in.
If you can manage it that
If
way.
you can.
Yeah.
Because that can be bad. Okay, so sometimes you're just like making these impulsive things, and maybe that wouldn't. Don't give things away yet that are of any kind of value because you never know if you would want them back. Seek help. And I really, really, truly feel like the big one for us has been finding a way to do something in their honor.
Yeah.
So before
And
we,
it doesn't have to be grandiose. We have a tendency to be extra in our ways, but I mean, I tell you, those actions could be a simple one action
it
thing.
could be finding
Whatever that looks
a
like.
Christmas tree and at the mall that has someone you can buy a gift for, that's in need. It could be anything,
Find a way.
but find a way. And before we wrap this up, I want to say there is help if you are in a domestic violence situation. And I've made it my mission to try to talk about domestic violence and have people know that there is help out there.
Yep.
In our local market, the Marjorie Mason Center is literally just a phone call away. Their website has a quick exit if you're on there and somebody comes in. They will house you and your kids.
They've got pretty
know,
amazing support system.
and
I'll tell you, just to touch on this, is that this is just one thing that we're dealing with, but there's so many variables of how grief comes into play. But remember that there is someone out there or some way out there, but you got to be willing to look and listen.
And there are tons of
You're not
support
alone, as
groups.
they say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Churches in all different kinds, some that are free. And so seek help because it does stink that you have to move on.
Yep.
But life does move forward.
Yep.
And you
It's a
can't
choice.
stay in that limbo spot. We can honor those that have gone. We can remember them. We can laugh about them. I will always remember my sister,
Yep.
and we will always talk about her.
Yep.
But life has to be able to move forward.
Yeah.
So I would say that my best advice and connect with those that you love. Like we are so enjoying, that sweet little baby that came out of this. And so find something that brings you joy.
For sure. 100%.
This has been a different type of episode for us,
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
do hope that
Heartfelt, very heartfelt in the sense of how we
Yeah.
pivot out of this and great topic.
well, it's not a great topic, but it is
Well,
a
it
good
is a great
topic to
People need to listen.
help people move through and
Hopefully we help somehow.
yeah, and move forward, honor those that you love.
Great job, babe.